What'd you eat for breakfast this morning?
Nothing.
Nothing.
But a normal breakfast is a bowl of grits and a can of Bahia sausages.
How'd you come to know Jesus?
Alright, I came to know Jesus when I was 13 years old as a teenager. I attended a church called South Greenwood Pentecostal Holiness Church. So I grew up in an environment of a Christian environment of a lot of do's and don'ts. And there was something different about that night when I was down there. I felt a pulling, a yearning or something to get to know Jesus. You know, you always hear that you want to experience Jesus. And so I say that this is the first time that I actually experienced God. Can't remember the evangelist's name. I know the pastor was W.G. Ellenberg Sr. And don't even know what the young evangelist preached about that night, but there was that drawing of the Spirit that night. They gave the invocation and I stood up, and as I stood up I began to cry. And I noticed that my tears burned on both my cheeks as they just ran down. And I could barely see, but a young lady that worked with the youth named Shirley Hosey, she took me by the hand and said, "Bill, let's go down and pray." And I said, "Okay." And as we started down the aisle, my eyes looked to the right of the church down near the piano, and there was a clock up there. And the clock said 8:15 in the evening. I knelt down to pray, and as I knelt down to pray, all of a sudden I realized I wasn't in the church. I was in a field, pretty green grass, and I could see this figure coming towards me. And wow, his face was so bright I couldn't make it out, but he had the purple robe and the white on that you see that Jesus has in all these pictures. And he just walked up and put his arms around me gently, and I get a little excited, and he backed away from me. And when I opened my eyes, I was laying prostrate on the floor, and it was 4:20 in the morning. And I asked W.G. Ellenberg, I said, "Where is everybody?" And he said, "You know, it's 4:30 in the morning." He said, "Just me, the evangelist, my mom and daddy, and I were still in the church." And I said, "But I just knelt down." Now, I was a teenager, and I was moving into the years of rebellion, the years of dealing with becoming a man, becoming all that I need to be. And I battled the same things that the teenagers today battle: drinking, smoking, chasing wild women. My teenage years, I was an athlete. I played for the Greenwood Emerald. Went into service, and the whole time that I was in service, I thank God I had praying parents. I was in service. I was in Hong Kong, full of myself. You know, being the Navy guy, I walked around this street corner, and there was this temple. Don't know what the temple was for, but it had dragons and bulls and all these weird animals. And I told myself, I'm going to go in there and take a look. And I started up this big flight of stairs. And to this day, I can't figure out what happened. But when I got to the top of the steps and started through the door, it was like something stopped me and said, "Don't go any further." And I believe to this day that was the evil spirit was in that place. And because of my praying parents, God said, "No more. You wandered away, but you can't go any further." And so I backed out and never went back. I have a prodigal son, a meth addict. Very difficult. I have thrown him out of the house many times. And this one time I threw him out and I couldn't take it anymore. I was a South Carolina State Trooper. I dumped him out of the State Trooper car on the street in Belton, South Carolina. I told him I loved him, but you got to get straight. As I drove away, I began crying unconsciously. Just couldn't. I had to pull the patrol car over in front of the subway in Belton. And I sit there and I was crying like a baby. And I said, "Why, God? Why do I have to deal with this?" And as I cried, there was a knock on my door. And it scared me. And I opened my eyes, and it was a friend I hadn't seen in years, named Ray Baldwin. And I let the window down, and he said, "Bill, are you okay?" And I said, "No." And we cried and shouted on the side of the street again, because God said, "I ain't gonna leave you." And he stayed with me ever since. And okay, so if teenagers will allow God to lead them, and if they will listen to God when He's leading them, it's harder sometimes, then God will use them in simple little ways. It may just be a prayer, or it may just be go stand by somebody who's having a hard time. Because sometimes you don't have words to say. You just stand by them and they know what's going on.
Yep.